Morning. We're going to receive a presentation from D2 Cybersecurity. It's important if you do a Google search, you put in D2 Cybersecurity because there's a lot of companies with the name D2. When I first looked at it, it looked pretty exciting because they train, one of the companies trains in active shooter defenses and things of this nature, but that's not the kind of security we're talking about this morning. What D2 is going to talk to us this morning about is building a culture of cybersecurity within your organizations. So rather than the hard science, the infrastructure side of things, firewalls, et cetera, EDR, MDR, and all that alphabet soup, they're going to talk to us about how you create an organizational culture that is aware of cybersecurity and will help in our defense against malicious software and cyber attacks. And with that, I'll turn it over. I'll introduce Michael Isolda. Michael is a member of the D2 organization. Michael is also an GMIS member and was a former government IT director in the state of New Jersey. And he's accompanied by Brian Lau, and Brian is the director of D2 and cybersecurity. And with that, gentlemen, I'll turn it over to you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, John. Appreciate the introduction. So Michael and I have been working not only within the New Jersey area, but cybersecurity for a while. Let me go to the next page. We've been a New Jersey GMIS member since about 2018, with maybe a gap during that 1 year of COVID. But we are a women-owned small business located in Somerset, New Jersey. We have our own 30,000 square foot building that allows us to be able to do a lot of production capabilities. In my past life, I did a lot of work for the U.S. Army, deploying a lot of training systems to folks in a very mission critical setting that needed to get timely information, rather quickly. So that's where a lot of my background comes from. And in the last 7-8 years, what we've been doing at D2 is working with a lot of schools, municipalities, a lot of the SLED and government organizations to be able to help improve their cybersecurity positions by reducing the risk and being proactive on the preventative side. That's one of the most important things that we do as a company. We're mainly focused on the preventative side of cybersecurity. We work with all levels of your organization, your mayor, your business administrator, we've clerks. We understand that municipalities have a lot of different people associated with the organization, all that can make effective, positive cybersecurity change, not only from a technical side, but from a culture side as well. One of the feathers in our cap recently is that we won what's known as a cyber joint insurance fund opportunity, which allows us to be able to essentially work with over 65% of New Jersey's municipalities. And we'll discuss a little bit more about that shortly. So essentially what we do over at D2 is that we try to take a holistic approach in order to address risk. We have 5 different services. There are 4 in the bubble, but there are 2 that are overlapping. We essentially do information security gap assessments, which is essentially audits or a check on your controls from a people, process, and technology standpoint to see where you align. This is with NIST and ISO. But we're not trying to make you guys Fort Knox at the same time. We understand that there's a level of overkill within this. Business continuity and disaster recovery plans. This is essentially some sort of documentation and a plan that you need in the event of something happening. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But this is one of the things that is very important for a lot of organizations nowadays. We have vulnerability and pen testing. I'll kind of describe that a little bit later on. And then the last is security awareness training, which is training to help your users avoid some of these phishing ransomware attacks, along with phishing simulations, which helps them test in real life how to be able to avoid phishing, spear phishing scenarios, as well as avoid the biggest common threat, which is the social engineering side. So essentially what we're doing is that we're going to talk about New Jersey as a whole first, but then a lot of different public sectors. So obviously within New Jersey, there's a lot of different entities. There's over 1,500 public sector entities. And right now, a lot of you guys are under a mandate, or not a mandate at this moment, but you guys really only have best practices in a lot of cases in terms of what you should or shouldn't be doing. And in terms of government organizations and schools, there are some light controls that are, again, asked of you. Again, best practices coming down from the government along with the state education sectors, but they're only really guidelines. They're not, people aren't checking what these controls are. There's no repercussions of not having these controls in many cases. So what's happening is that the insurance industries are paying out a lot when it comes to remediating slash being the net, if you will, of people that slip through, essentially. So the insurance industry has been paying out extreme amounts of claims recently, way more than they're collecting. So right now their premiums are getting higher, services are getting less, and they're asking you to do more things because they're so behind the gun. The average cost of a data breach is projected to be 4.2 million in 2023. That cost has greatly increased, not only because of how much data is touched, but how many networks and things are associated with people's network, how much data is associated with all the different networks that are connected. The public sector saw a 95% increase in cyber attacks in 2022, and that's only supposed to rise in 2023. So why are you guys a target? Well, obviously, one of the biggest reasons is because of lack of budget, and hackers unfortunately know this as well. COVID has seen a huge rise in remote access systems, which is one of the big things that is increasing the surface area for the attacks. So this has really helped not only hackers, but the quantity of these emails and the amount of work from home. Now the technology is meant to access these systems, and not all the controls are put in place to be able to prevent that. Like in the beginning, schools were doing Zoom sessions that were open to the public. We recently found out how bad that is because of Zoom bombing and other things like that, but that's a small example. The vast amount of personal identifier information that you guys have is also very valuable to hackers. Obviously, in a municipal setting, you have all the data on your constituents in each of your towns, but then schools are obviously a big target as well. And one of the interesting things about schools is that their PII, or students' PII, is one of the most valuable on the dark web, because how many times have you ever run a credit check on a 5 to 10-year-old? Probably about zero. And hackers know this too. So they use that information in order to create credit cards, other information, and create a digital profile that is even stronger than the child itself because of this. So in each of these cases, there are obviously different areas in which data is sensitive. The other thing that municipalities have is that they're also attached to police stations, as well as some older or medical facilities, in which case there's a lot of other data associated, and other very sensitive data, dash cam footage from police officers, as well as going down to individual full healthcare records in cases where there's nursing homes or assisted living homes, or other government facilities that help in that.
Okay, this is me. Real quick, I just want to do a shout out. It's obviously Cybersecurity Awareness Month, but we really look at this as being every day is cybersecurity awareness. I helped recharter GMIS with Mark Pfeiffer and Mitch Dare 20 years ago, and was president of GMIS for 6 years. But one of the great things, and it's only happened in the last 5, even though NJ Kick with New Jersey Cybersecurity and Communications Integration Cell is only in existence since 2015, and the federal government having MSI SACs and even the NASCIO state CIOs and what we're doing, from a state, county, local. It's only been 5 years that we've really trickled down on getting some guidelines, but again, unfunded mandates for cybersecurity. And until GMIS came about with our partners when we have our tech conference, and I still sit on the foundation board and now partnering with D2. Coming back from retirement as a public official, how could I help public sector awareness and cybersecurity being the things that keep CIOs up at night? So when we're looking at these organizations, they're fairly new and a lot has not trickled down for public officials. So again, we're trying to get out there, aligning ourselves, as we'll do in future slides, with the leadership and why cybersecurity is a shared responsibility for everyone. So again, I thank GMIS for making awareness even at NJKIC and the way that we coordinate them at our conferences and when we do the digital government advisory boards. It has opened up our eyes. I want to hand off specifically to Brian on the insurance side and the GIFs on that end.
And so kind of going back to what I was mentioning before, insurance carriers have felt the great brunt. Almost all of you guys have cyber insurance and probably experience, well, not probably, but some of you have experienced a claim or you know somebody that's experienced a claim. And one of the things with cybersecurity or in cyber insurance is that since most have it, it was extremely cheap 5 years ago compared to where it is now. And that cost is probably the highest rising cost, not only in insurance, either up 50 to 100% a year or more on certain individuals, but especially in this sector. And obviously, it's very important to be able to provide offsetting financial risk for. That's one of the reasons why you guys have it, and this is also one of the reasons why they're driving standards to this industry, because they're the one business function area that has pushed back when it came to, in order to get this sort of insurance, you need to do this. So obviously it's very similar to health insurance or kind of getting a car. If you need car insurance, you have to make sure that you're not, you have under 12 points on your license, you register your car, you have other protections in place in order for you to get insured. Same thing's happening in the cyber insurance world, where they're asking and checking more of these demands. Now, some of the instances I just wanted to make you aware of is that a lot of the time when you do or when you apply for cyber insurance, it's a self-assessed form. And in the self-assessment, if you answer it incorrectly, it's not like a life insurance where they come check your blood pressure and make sure you are what you say you are. In cybersecurity, they offer you a questionnaire, you answer it on your own. And the only time that ever really gets looked at or scrutinized in the event of you having a claim. If this doesn't match up, if you say, hey, I've got multi-factor or dual factor for everybody, however, or if you say you have multi-factor or dual factor, but they're requiring you to have it for everybody, but you have it for all your full-time, but not all your part-time, but some of your part-time's on your network. That claim could get denied because it wasn't for everybody. So these are the small little things that people know, but at the same time, it's the pitfalls of, unfortunately, insurance. And in certain cases, you might not get covered for what you think you are covered for. So obviously, insurance is a very important aspect, but you have to make sure that what you're getting covered for and the fact that their asks are a lot higher nowadays when it comes to what you need in order to not only get insurance, but also to renew. So those things are always changing and rapidly approaching to higher levels of standards than they were a few years ago.
We all heard of cyber attacks, and we could go through thousands. I mean, I'm sure we all get our eRepublic blasts every day and GovTech and who got hit next, whether it's a school district, a hospital, a public entity, and this specifically Nassau County with the breaches. But what's interesting, and I want to pull out while it was a connected public safety and it's people could die if you don't have the systems up, and then you have to go to pen and paper, which I'm sure we've all done when we've had outages in our 911 systems, or if we do shared 911 with counties. There's been cries for help from departments saying that, you know, we need to look at some of these cyber maintenance dollars or proactive services, or in you know, trying to prevent cyber attacks with upgrades. And you know, what's happened is, and for instance, not patching servers, it's real life where you get hit and it causes outages. And it's unfortunate that many times money gets voted down in order to modernize a lot of these existing systems. And it's like, if it's not broke, don't touch it. Most importantly, there were instances of doing penetration tests and doing a cyber study, and the results are then not favored by administration, and they would look unfavorably towards the IT group. So we've got this push-pull. The takeaway from this slide, it's 2023. We as IT professionals and leaders, and we'll get into that a little bit more, need to put money in our operating budget like we do for maintenance of a server, whether it's on-prem or the cloud. So really, that's the takeaway from this slide. And we'll talk a little bit about some funding strategies in order to help fund within your organization.
Nassau County currently is still experiencing outages where not all their servers are back up, or not all their systems are back up. So from almost a year ago, they're still not only dealing with the repercussions of this, but operationally, they're still not back up to 100%. So it is definitely something that you want to be able to avoid. And you know, during this incident, the one thing that was interesting as well was that the town also found that, or the constituents of the town found that their county was liable. Now, what happens when you're a constituent of the town and you find your town or your county liable is you're essentially suing yourself in some sort of way, and or demanding representation on yourself, and that's raising your own taxes. So it's obviously something that's obviously not beneficial, and you want to stay in front of this. And at the end, all they did was offer credit monitoring. I have my information breached through the Office of Personnel Management because I have top secret clearance from my past life, and all my information is on the dark web, and that's the area where they keep all the government and classified information for personnel for the entire US government. And so not all information is safe, and really one of the only things you can do is credit monitor after that. The biggest threats that we face nowadays, I start with social engineering attacks because phishing is probably one of the biggest entry points into an organization. One of the biggest threats of any organization is the humans and the human factor, because 95% of most cyber attacks come from human error. And that is a lot due to phishing attacks. Now, with phishing attacks, one of the biggest increases has been social engineering and the advent of AI and ChatGPT. ChatGPT, or all these AI writing tools, allows hackers to be able to not only impersonate folks more and better, but use this data in terms of scale, or use this information in order to scale their attacks in ways that they have never done before, with more targeted emails, more specific emails to your likes, to your friends. And so all this creates better emails or messages or interactions with other people out there on LinkedIn, Facebook. Again, email is one of the biggest breaches, but all these different things help in this social engineering because you're trying to recreate somebody or pretend to be somebody else. So that's a huge area. Data breaches obviously are huge. A lot of data breaches happen due to, again, not patching, phishing attempts. One of the best ways to be able to prevent a data breach, and ransomware for that matter, is doing vulnerability assessments or external vulnerability scans, as well as pen testing. external vulnerability scans and pen testing are two different activities, but actually this will work well in the next slide too. So ransomware attacks is obviously something that all you guys know and understand about. It's essentially a vicious form of malware that encrypts all the information on your network, or as much as it could touch. So one of the funny things about ransomware is one of your users doesn't just clicks on a ransom or malicious email and all of a sudden your whole network goes down. It takes time. Most ransomware attacks happen after sitting on the network for 100 days. Why do you ask? Well, they want to be able to figure out where this could go. So in your network, you have your one user that clicks on the malware. The whole idea for the malware is to figure out how far it could spread. And so in this particular case, if you have an internal user that spreads, is this user a high or low level credentialed user? If the phishing attack happens to a mayor and a mayor has access to your accounts receivable, your HR files, your public records, all those pieces are accessible to the malware or ransomware to encrypt. If ransomware happens on a secretary who may have very limited access, the ability for the ransomware to spread is a lot less. So in a lot of these cases, there's a lot of preventative things that you can do in order to get in front of even these attacks before they happen. And oh, by the way, that's also one of the reasons why the password policy is roughly about 100 days, because malware sits on your computer for 100 days. So if you change your password in that time, the whole idea is hopefully the bad malicious actors don't keep that in or get your login information to kind of keep engineering these attacks as well as penetrating your network. So this is why insurance is leading the way by now having these as requirements. So as a basic requirement for you or any organization nowadays getting insurance, it is password management is one. Complexity requirements, you need uppercase, lowercase. We all know that. We've all kind of gone through these password resets before in the past, but also a period expiration. So in some cases, period expiration is needed. That's the 100 days. However, if you have things like multi or dual factor, these things don't necessarily passwords don't necessarily always need to be modified in the event that you have multi-factor. So some of these tools sit on top of each other and or provide you relief in other areas. Basic security tools, obviously the antivirus, spam filtering, and firewall in your network is important. Critical patch management is also one of the things that they're looking for. So what hackers do is that they have tools to be able to scan for what's known as vulnerabilities on your network. Vulnerabilities are things that hackers exploit within operating systems, within devices and tools that you have. So some examples are Windows 97. Windows 97 is no longer supported anymore. So if you have a Windows 97 computer on your network, hackers have an entry into your network and machine because this is not supported by Microsoft anymore. Now, from the outside, if you have a Windows 97 machine and you turned it on, I'll kind of give you a story about one of the municipalities we work with. They had a police officer who went to Iraq to serve, came back, and during or afterwards, they wanted to recover his records. So they turned on this Windows 97 computer, and at this time, they forgot to turn it off. When we did a vulnerability scan the previous month, no vulnerabilities. Afterwards, there were a ton of vulnerabilities. Why? Well, it's because they had the Windows 97 machine up and running. And so at any time, if a hacker were to look for this, so hackers could scan the web and find out all the people that have this particular Windows 97 operating system out, and then start sending exploits or attacks to these people because they know that there is this vulnerability area. Same thing with something like security cameras as well. We've noticed that doing a lot of external vulnerability scans and pen testing, we found that there are a lot of Chinese cameras being used that are on the NSA ban list that have critical vulnerabilities that allow almost anybody to be able to view those cameras from the outside. Obviously, in jail cell scenarios, in schools, we found them in. These are things obviously you don't want, but these are the things that patching and or external vulnerability scans help you notice. The last is an incident response plan, which is essentially in the event of X or any cyber incident, you're going to do this. So it's a plan of remediation response. It's not necessarily how to fix everything, it's how to be able to report things and plan a response to your audience as well as your constituents. So right now, the new requirements that are coming out are so if you were to say get cybersecurity insurance last year, those were the things that they were asking you. Right now, they're asking you for a slightly different set, but it's a little bit added on top. So employee training obviously is one of the things that not only insurance values as an area to be to reduce risk the most, but again, it is working on the largest threat area, which is your employees. So being able to reduce it at that level is obviously very important. Off network backups. So one of the things is obviously following the 3-2-1 rule, which is 3 different backups, 2 different locations, 1 encrypted. Weekly backups are recommended, and then also testing your backups. I can't tell you how many times that I've heard and talked to folks that have done, and they're like, oh yeah, I back up, no problem. And then I ask them, have you tested it? Those answers are much lower. And test it, if you don't test your backups, you have no idea if they work. So you have no idea if that's actually a fail-safe option for you in the event of something like ransomware. Multi-factor authentication obviously is something that's very important. If you don't have it, that's one of the biggest things that we would recommend. It's all encompassing, it's blanketing, and it is one of the biggest ways to be able to prevent not only ransomware, but other data breaches. And endpoint detection and response. This is obviously the network monitoring and support for this. So what requirements are coming next? So in terms of future requirements, some of the things are multi off network backup. So this is more than one. Incident response plans and then testing them. So before it was, here you have an incident response plan, like a piece of paper that you could go to is what they asked for. But have you ever tested it with your organization? That is essentially, have you gone through with your mayor, your BA, your IT director, and other department leaders to say, this is how we're going to go through it. This is, all right, we have a cyber incident. What is everybody's plan and tasks are supposed to do? Oftentimes, people only dust off this binder or this piece of paper in the event of an incident, but that's not necessary. It's like testing a fire drill. Like, you know, when we go through schools, at least there's a fire drill like every month in order to test and prep the students in order for the meltdown incident. Now, this is the same thing with cyber. If you're not practicing these incident response plans, it's not as valuable as you think. Access privilege controllers, that's essentially we're going through and segmenting your users based on permissions and privileges. Does your mayor need access to everything? Probably not. You should be limiting permission structures as much as to people that need it. This definitely helps not only prevent ransomware, but other malware from spreading across your network, which is even more important. Third-party security audits obviously is one thing. It is difficult for you to do an audit on yourself. Sometimes people don't know what they don't know, and in certain cases, even with MSPs that we've worked with, they've asked us to do security audits for their clients, not only to be an independent party, but because most MSPs are not security professionals. They are IT professionals that security now falls under their hat, but it's not their main core competency. So we help a lot of MSPs along with technical teams within municipalities and school districts help improve their cybersecurity position in conjunction with them. We don't take over any staff. We work on the preventative side again. Data encryption, operational technologies as well is really important to be able to not only scale and transfer that risk, asset privilege controls as well. So not only access to that, but assets as well. So this is the data that you have. And then the other is DDoS attack detection. DDoS attacks are essentially when you ping your network so many times or your server so many times that it makes it fail and go down. So these are all the things that we are not only trying to prevent, but these are the next things the insurance is looking for to be able to get in front of the next incoming threats.
I just want to add, denial of service happened when we would do student testing. And we actually moved from a Cisco firewall to Palo Alto, which was a game changer at that time, and prevented us from testing the students. We had to close schools at times. But I'm going to go through these next 5 slides rather quickly in order to, I see everybody who's on the call. A lot of these things you do every day. So I don't want to sound like I'm preaching, but it's very important that the leadership is involved with cybersecurity and what we're doing. And it's just more than an IT concern. It underscores it's a business requirement. And everybody needs to understand it, and the focus of awareness and the threats for all staff members. But what's most important is that this is bad. I mean, we are talking about, the old days when we just had a mainframe computer, it wasn't hooked to the internet and the outside world. Once we flipped that switch, as we all know, our lives changed. So the scare tactics, I hate to say, with identity theft and down systems and denial of service that Brian just mentioned, and really more extortion, a lot of what's happening can be avoided by proactive services and not, which is what we do at D2. The reactive is more mitigation. That's not what we do as a company. There's other companies that do that. So awareness training is one of our biggest things that we do. But it's very important that all departments be brought in and working together in order to make what comes from top down a successful awareness program, because it only takes one little click. And as you know, it could really affect everyone. So again, one of the things that GMIS, we were involved in a retreat last month. We talked about IT certification and awareness. To be a CFO, you need certification. To be a tax collector, you need certification. We really want to raise that bar as a part of certification in the state of New Jersey and nationally, that at least we have cyber as a part of that, and you just can't put someone in charge of your IT services, whether it's a managed service provider, third party. Having some sort of certification that builds in this awareness of cybersecurity, because it is, really bad, and we need to get in front of it. And there's a lot of local officials, public entities that don't even have this awareness. And Brian, you talk, the backup situation is classic. You try to go back to reload and you can't, and it's devastating. We're dealing with many customers that didn't do these services that have been down for a year and have lost emails and services and rebuilding servers. So I just wanted to make that point. I don't know if you have anything else you'd like to talk about on this slide before we go to the next.
Yeah, one of the biggest things too, and the challenges that we see is like IT seems to just be an IT problem. When I talk to a mayor about, hey, are you doing anything on cybersecurity? Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes the response is, I got an IT guy that handles that. Well, as you know, for pretty much all the IT directors in this room, you know that it's not just on your lap. The business administrator has to be involved in order to kind of get budget. He's also generally the business administrator, he or she is often the ones that is also the person that is getting cyber insurance and then talking with the IT director. Have we done these things? And then during this conversation is also, we need money. And in that conversation is also with the mayor. So if all these people need to understand and work together in order to build the program. And if the mayor or someone in the top leadership is lackadaisical about cybersecurity, that generally trickles all the way down in the organization. So really, cybersecurity is a leadership imperative, and it's something that comes from the top down in a lot of cases. And removing the barriers is very important in order to build a culture within your municipality or school district.
here, the importance of leadership buy-in. We can't do any of these things if we don't have the leaders understanding it. But one of the things that we have raised awareness, and organizations like GMIS, that we align with partners and understanding, and organizations, whether it's the league, whether it's school boards, whether it's GFOA, whether NGMA or NJAC, that has really raised the bar, where we have gone to many of these organizations and these levels and are teaching, what do public officials need to know about cybersecurity, or what do they need to know about technology? That was one that we did many years ago. It sort of has evolved. And again, it's the top down, the mayor, the superintendent, as we look at your commissioners and the BAs that would do the day-to-day. But I'm not going to read to these, but we know that it has to come from these leaders in order for it to trickle down. And that's why we align ourselves with a lot of these conferences. In fact, we'll be at school boards and next week, and at the league and NJAC, and raising awareness so public officials understand the severity of it, and where to find some funding resources in order to find money within your operating budgets towards training. Because that's the first thing that obviously always gets cut in budgets, as we know. It's like, oh, we can get rid of that training program. Well, between insurance, which Brian will talk a little bit more, those days have changed. So if we can go to the next slide. And very important, we have insourced managed service providers that help us, whether we have full-time staff or not. So they have to be advocates and have these controls and understand the safeguards and get the certification that we need. And a part of that is GMIS and awareness and KIC. That's been incredible. But there's a legislative part. And also if whether you're going to council meetings or if you have the public to saying, hey, what are we doing about cybersecurity? Obviously, you have to pass that red face test and understand, yes, we have a plan and we're happy to meet and discuss that. So minimally with joint insurance, it's raised the bar, just like sexual harassment training that we would have as public officials. We needed that in order to get that reduction in insurance. Now cyber obviously has become in the forefront with that. Go to the next slide.
Well, I just want to mention one thing. As IT directors here, one of the biggest things too is to have conversations that boil down to also business needs. And when it comes to IT directors, the ones that have been most successful that we've worked with have communicated not only the business needs, but the severity up, not necessarily in terms of IT standards, but in terms of business, plain and simple language. When you tell, hey, we could get shut down and we could lose XYZ. It's not like, oh, we need to do this pen test in order to prevent a DDoS attack or something. Like, you can't talk technical with these guys. Oftentimes when you're sharing with BAs, with mayors, as you're talking from the IT standpoint, where you have to break it down to either insurance, different levels of standards amongst your peers. You have to make something relatable to them. And having that conversation is really important with others around you, and to be able to get buy-in from other department heads. So if you're an IT director, probably one of your best friends should be your BA within your organization, because of how symbiotically you need to work together when it comes to not only the insurance, but buying these things. This person has to be the one to help advocate with you. Is like, oh, the mayor maybe want a playground, or your superintendent wants a playground to put his name on it, instead of improving your cybersecurity posture or your technology stack. So it is very different when it comes to each organization, but a lot of the times it is driven by the IT director's understanding, but often stops because they're putting it in technical terms, not in business terms.
Ryan wanted me to move it along because I could talk, because we do this every day and we go back and forth. It was like an hour we ended up talking. But once my mayor or my superintendent would see me, like, oh boy, here comes Isolde. He needs money for something. And what's going on? What's the problem? We have a seat at the table now versus what, 10 years ago or 15 years ago. But again, with leadership, it's important, but a roadmap and what we need for strategies and dollars and what we need to be champions I'm going to talk about some of those strategies and a way to avoid some of this risk. And we're not alone. I mean, that is where I think it was Tammy. I think Tammy's on the call. We didn't even know that there was other people out there that could help you, like maybe Leon. We sit at this board and we exchange these ideas. This is where this awareness comes about as public entities, and we're champions. We're going throughout the state and throughout the country in order to explain how we can help public entities with cybersecurity awareness and just speaking, not necessarily selling, but awareness. And that's what this whole month is about. Do you want to just touch on the joint insurance fund, or did you already?
Yeah, sure. So there's a lot of different funding mechanisms. Like one of the biggest, again, has come from the insurance side. New Jersey happens to be one of the states that has rather strong what's known as joint insurance funds. It's a collection of municipalities, utility authorities, housing authorities, or like-minded public entities that pool their money together in order to avoid risk. That is a lot of our clients within New Jersey have been given to us by joint insurance funds or mandated. That's one of the reasons why insurance has been one of the biggest drivers of this, because they're not only feeling the pain, but the joint insurance funds are also helping in this effort. So a lot of you on the call are part of not only joint insurance funds, but have joint insurance fund offerings that are available to you that are potentially even for free to your town. Definitely look into that and take advantage of it, especially if you are.
And we have the free
Do I-
resources with NJKIC and CISA, which I'm going to go on to the next slide. But again, it's free. There are paid services that go deeper. Brian, we often talk about that free isn't always the best, but at least there's some good guidelines, and they do offer scratch the surface federal programs, and then you can then pay to go a little further.
Yeah, as Michael mentioned, free comes with a certain level of standards as well. It's like, you could go to the park every day, run, do your push-ups and everything like that, but going to the gym or having a personal trainer definitely helps ensure a better outcome. And this is kind of, I want to say we're the personal trainer, but in a lot of cases we help assist you and help guide your and work with your organization to help complete a lot of these checklists and kind of get over some of these barriers.
One of the areas, and finding money within your budgets, whether it's having conversations about, 10% increase contractually that you need to cut when you talk to vendors, or your budget 2 years out with discounts, or you do some shared services, which I fortunately was involved with town, school, and police, so we had better buying. Telecom is another area where don't sign any long-term contracts, that there's amazing what can be done with lifting and shifting, and whether it's a lease purchase or use capital dollars with all these new digital virtualization and MSPs that reduce costs. So there are ways to find money for these unfunded mandates for cybersecurity awareness in all the different levels. So you don't necessarily have to ask for more money. There are ways as IT directors, and I'd be happy to give you a toolkit from how I built a private fiber network, and we reduced it and built that line for cybersecurity after we had our first penetration test. And then I was called in to say, this wasn't good. So we now are an advocate. We have a seat at the table. So if also there are the federal grant dollars that started back in 2021, which is a 5-year plan, which is $1 billion there, which is the SLCGP. We also have a part of some state co-ops. And one of the things too is working together and raising this awareness. There's different levels we follow with the grants office, which is a free service to a lot of your different organizations that scour 5,000 grant organizations, that there are dollars out there, whether they're competitive and you have to work hard or you need somebody to write. So we can help guide you with some of those grant solutions. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, so on some of the grants as well, I believe with the DHS grant, it was something like $2 to $5 million for the state of New Jersey for next year. And I think broken down that equals like a laptop for each organization. Not everybody obviously applies for grants, but it's definitely a great funding source for your organization to be able to pull some dollars that you might not have previously had. Awareness training, a lot of these preventative things are found in a lot of these grants nowadays. So definitely look into and take advantage of that as you can.
And contract vehicles, you have to be able to get to the partners. So Brian, you've done an incredible job with aligning with New Jersey school boards and Carasoft and certainly the CyberGIF, but GSA, and now we're a part of Bergen County Co-op and SHI, and which their Carasoft is a part of Value Point. So there are vehicles to get to. It's easier where cybersecurity wasn't on a state contract and training, and it's getting better, not just for us, but for many companies. So we're out there and being able to easy to get to us and to be under a contract and not having to go out to bid.
So I'd like to end with this particular slide. Think of cybersecurity like you do your health. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. That's probably one of the biggest things about cybersecurity is prevention is not only the cheapest method, but it is also one of the most effective to prevent. A lot of the things out there are reactive measures and or tools to be able to constantly scan and monitor your network. A lot of the things that we do at D2 Cybersecurity is on the prevention side. It is a lot easier and more costly not to be able to have an incident than obviously to have one. And there's no one thing that you can unfortunately do. You know, one of the things about the American health system is, hey, pop a pill for this. Don't change your habits. Don't, if you're a smoker or say if you're, you have a disease or something, a lot of the time it's take this drug and that's supposed to cure it instead of potentially changing your habits. Unfortunately, cybersecurity is on the changing habit side. Like you have to change your habits. There's not one thing you could do. There's not an IT guy you could hire to be able to prevent this. So it is very important that you understand this, and it is a culture changing habit. And one of the things too is that almost everybody here does a health screening on yourself, especially the older you get, the more often that you have to do this. Same thing with cybersecurity. Each time that you change or modify your network, there should be some pen testing done. You should be constantly checking and monitoring yourself to not only see where you are, but see where you are amongst your peers. Now, one of the things about this industry as well is everybody's at a different state. People are F's or A's when it comes to cybersecurity. It is never too late to start somewhere. So probably my biggest takeaway is don't make this seem overwhelming. There's always not only a place to start, but you could take baby steps. But those baby steps are important, and the communication to your mayors, your supers, your business administrators, and those around you to not only understand, but to make small steps in that direction or bigger steps, depending on where you are. If you are interested, we are going to be at these local conferences soon. NJSBA workshop in October, the League in November, GMIS in April, I believe. Texpo in January, NJAC, I forgot the date. I think April or May too.
I believe May. Junkin.
But we've been in New Jersey for working about 7 years. I was very fortunate to meet Bob McQueen about 7 years ago in Princeton. I went to high school in Princeton, and I'm very fortunate to be able to work with and give back to everyone in my town. So I'm working with the Princeton Public Library, Princeton Municipality, along with the school district as well. And it's really an honor for me to be able to work with a lot of my state members and constituents to not only give back, but to be able to educate and help drive one of the biggest pressing concerns on the public sector, which is cybersecurity, and help educating fellow New Jersey members and municipalities. So thank you very much. Do you guys have any questions for us?
No, how you doing? John Gee here, Bloomfield. I just want to add a couple of things that just to highlight some of the things that you guys mentioned and the importance of cybersecurity in a plan. Working with partners like D2 is very important, and I think they understand. And any partner, and D2 certainly has that mindset where knowing cybersecurity and engaging with municipalities and local government is a process. And as Brian just mentioned, every first engagement or whatever engagement you bring in a party that's going to address your cybersecurity needs, these third parties understand the process, and a lot of times they walk you through it. And as IT directors, it's hard. It's difficult to lend your network to someone that's going to actually scrutinize it. I've done it in the past, and you have to actually trust the process and have the third eyes on that somebody's going to say, hey, look, these are the immediate needs you're going to need. These are the things, and these are the recommendations. And partnering with partners like D2 and bringing in a third party is essential to actually getting your and addressing your vulnerabilities. And personally speaking, working with partners like D2 and working with the administration, I've been told don't touch it, because if you touch it, you're gonna own it. And this is in reference to a system which I on the police side. And they said, you know what, don't do it, don't help them out. If you do it, if something happened, you're gonna own it. And as true IT professionals, you can't just stand by and watch something being done not to the full potential of actually meeting some basic needs. And working with partners like D2 will actually give you the tools to say, look, we need to address some of these things, and we know these third parties know how to address it and walk us through that process. So I appreciate Brian and Michael, definitely my GMIS teammate, for bringing this into a conversation. And we definitely need to have more and more conversation. I know right now AI is a hot topic, but cybersecurity is never going to go away. And it's actually being more and more structured. We have some good things in plan as far as the sector, but it's not going away.
Two things. John Gee is the president of GMIS chapter and also the IT director in Bloomfield. But John Gee, thank you. I think it'd be good to have a panel where we're all up there and you talk like you did, like GovTech does. I think maybe we need to figure that one out. But John Gee, thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you very much.
Look at 4 minutes to spare.
Any other questions, folks? Well, again, echoing what John Gee just said, thank you again, Brian and Mike, for this great presentation. I agree with you. You need a cybersecurity culture. I think I've created that here in Morris County. I have people call me all the time, buy me coffee because they learned something in some training I had provided them that prevented them from making a mistake on a phishing attack or something of that nature. So it's kind of interesting. Every time someone here in the county sees me, all they talk to me about is cybersecurity. So we've got it ingrained. I tell my commissioners, et cetera, I'm hoping that spotting phishing events and things of this nature is more of a muscle reflex than something they have to think about. So, but that takes time and that takes effort, and it takes a lot of patience to do. I do, and months like October, Cybersecurity Month, are good months for the IT organizations to put something out about cybersecurity to their organization, take advantage of these kinds of times where they dedicate a whole month to cybersecurity. Perfect time to start hammering people with some information about cybersecurity. And again, thank you, D2. again for your presentation, and barring any other questions. In fact, I do see one. Oh, no, everybody's saying thank you. Great session. So,
And John, thank you, and a shout out to Christina, the executive director. Appreciate all your help in coordinating things.
you're welcome. All right.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much,
folks.
guys. If you
All
do have
right.
any questions, feel free to reach out to Michael, and I would be more than happy to answer or address anything that you may have.
Okay. All right. Thanks,
Thank you very
everyone.
much.
Have a great day and a great rest of the week.
See you at the league.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.